council meetings and other board meetings, I like to go over the vision statement, and you can see the mission statement and the core values of the city council. The city council has adopted a vision statement that says Belmont will be a vibrant, multi-generational community that incorporates small town charm and heritage with an entrepreneurial spirit. So with that, I'll go over the consent agenda items. Your first five items on the consent agenda are minutes from previous meetings. Number one are minutes from a closed session that you held on February the 8th. And those should be handed out at your table. Number two is the regular meeting minutes from the March 1st regular meeting. Item three are the workshop meeting minutes from March 15th. Then if you recall, we had a closed session at the end of that. So item four is minutes from the closed session on March 15th. Item five is the minutes from your special meeting, which was our first budget workshop on March 22nd. And then item six is a follow-up from the March 15th workshop, and it's a resolution of support for the CATS LYNX Silverline locally preferred alternative. Item seven is the first budget amendment to the current year's budget, and that begins on page 77. That is to increase the current year's budget by almost $700,000, by $695,000. And that is to account for $180,000 in CARES Act revenue that we received from Gaston County to reimburse for some of the COVID-related expenditures, and from anticipated additional sales tax revenue of $300,000. Also, additional revenue from the sale of surplus property and from solid waste fee revenue of $150,000. So a total increase in general fund revenue of $695,000 and offsetting capital expenditures of the same amount. Okay. Item 8 is an item that you've done a lot in the last couple of years, and that is acceptance of streets within a new neighborhood. Phase 2 of the Conservancy at McLean. The developer has completed the infrastructure work on Conservancy Drive, Barbary Drive, Mayapple Way, and Lavender Lane. The streets, curbing, sidewalks, drainage, and street trees have been inspected by city staff and found to meet all of our rules for compliance for city standards. And we do recommend that you accept those streets for maintenance and ownership and maintenance. The next item is a follow-up from a request from Elements of Empowerment, I believe last month, for funding for the 2021 Juneteenth celebration in the amount of $10,000. We do have this funding available in the current year's budget. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the Belmont Juneteenth celebration. So Elements of Empowerment, who has been running our Juneteenth celebration for the last several years, wants to make a memorial video to commemorate 10 years of the Juneteenth celebration. So that's why this funding has increased from the normal $5,000 request to $10,000. We were the only town that has a Juneteenth celebration until just very recently, and I think Bessemer City they signed on with ours, and I think they hold their own, but it's basically Belmont and Bessemer City, so this is certainly something to celebrate. The 10th item on the consent agenda, we haven't done one of these in a while, but I'm happy to say that we have a request to close streets for a 5K race. We went, I think, throughout 2020 with no 5Ks and no events, but we're slowly getting back into the swing of things. So the Belmont Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association is asking to close down lanes for their Belmont Classic 5K, which will be Saturday, May the 15th. It'll be the same route that they normally use. Item 11 is a follow-up from your decision on the solid waste contract over the next 5 years to go with Waste Pro for all services except for yard collection and leaf collection. We're bringing that in-house, and in order to provide that service, we needed to purchase a new claw truck, a new small leaf vacuum truck, and 2 new large leaf vacuum trucks. That's a total cost of $757,000, which we'd like to finance over 5 years. Appreciate the Assistant City Manager, Kevin Krause, for negotiating a low rate. We've got a 1.21% interest rate on that equipment purchase and no documentation fees. You'll notice that the other bid that we received had a slightly lower interest rate, but had documentation fees, so it actually was a higher cost to the city. So we want to go with United Financial for that. And even with purchasing the equipment, it was still cheaper for us to provide the service in-house than it was to go with Waste Pro for it. And the final item on the consent agenda, item 12, is an amendment to the city's contract with Martin Starnes and Associates for the fiscal year 1920 audit, which should have been completed by now. Those are normally due in October, but because of COVID, those were extended until January. We are still not finished with that. So we are working with Martin Starnes. We're basically out of contract with them because of the time. So we need to amend the contract to extend the terms of their contract with us for the previous year's fiscal audit to June 1st, 2021. There's an additional cost of $3,625 for that. We should have that audit completed well before June 1st, but we wanted to say June 1st just to give us plenty of time and to make sure we don't have to amend it again. There were several issues that resulted in the audit being delayed that we've discussed in previous meetings, and we have taken steps as staff to ensure that those don't happen again. But we do need to get that contract amended so we can wrap up the audit. And I believe that's it for the consent agenda.
I have a question or
Yes.
two about item 11 and the loan for the leaf collection and yard debris equipment.
Yes, sir.
Is the, where are we getting the equipment from? I'm assuming that we're not getting the equipment from United Financial. They're just loaning us the money, is that correct?
Correct.
Then I don't understand. I mean, I have no issue choosing them over Pinnacle. Was it Pinnacle was the other one?
Yes, sir.
I have no issue choosing them. I just don't understand the structure of their proposal because it's set up as a lease, and that just doesn't make any sense to me. The proposal, the document itself says that legal title to the equipment is vested in us during the lease term, and that is not typically how a lease would work. With the lessor perfecting a security interest in that equipment, typically in a lease, the person leasing the equipment retains title to the property because then at the end of the lease term it goes back to them unless there's a provision otherwise. And again, if it's really a lease, they wouldn't be able to take a security interest in the equipment, and obviously I'm assuming they want to. But in a true lease, they wouldn't be able to take a security interest in it because we wouldn't have an interest in it. What they're really doing is it's a purchase money security interest. They're loaning us the money to buy to buy this equipment, and then they're taking a security interest in the equipment that we're using the money to buy as collateral for the loan. And I just don't understand why it's set up as a lease because I think that's confusing, and I don't think it's correct, and I think it could cause trouble down the road. I mean, I'm happy to choose them, but I have some questions as to why they're using terms like lessor and lease and lessee because that just doesn't make any sense. It's not a lease. It's not, they can call it whatever they like, but it's not a lease. And so I just think that might create some confusion down the road.
Kevin? He's handy to have around.
I would defer to the attorney.
Well, I could have done that.
And I'm not really sure. I can get some clarification.
I mean, they might have a very good reason for doing it. It just struck me reading it as like, that's not a lease. And
Right.
they shouldn't use that terminology because they're really, if it were a lease, they would not be able to take a security. And I mean, that would be probably better for us, but, it could lead to some trouble down the road if there's some interpretation issues.
And I'm familiar with the lender and have had successful experiences in the past. Parks, do you have anything to add on that?
I hadn't been asked to review this, so I'd be glad to do it, but I haven't had a chance to.
We can defer this to the workshop if you would prefer.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
All right. Because we still have time, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah. And I have no issue going with them. I'd like to clarify that. And if there's standard terms, they must have a very good reason for using the standard terms that I'm maybe not aware of, but I just want to make sure that we're structuring it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we get into the regular meeting, and we have the motion on the consent agenda, we'll just pull item 11 and defer that to the April 19th workshop.
Okay.
Any other questions on the consent agenda items? I know we've got a full house today, and if you'll allow me just a moment, we have public comment, which is 3 minutes on any topic. So if you're here for public comment, make sure that you've signed up for that. We have one public hearing, and it's on an annexation request. There is an associated rezoning, but the public hearing for that has already been closed. So if you want to speak on the annexation, make sure you sign up for that. I don't know who is here to talk about Frady Field and Crescent Park, but that is not on the agenda tonight. There has not been a rezoning or development plan submitted to us for consideration. So there is nothing on the agenda. There won't be anything on the agenda for many months with our normal process on that development. You're certainly welcome to speak to council if you have questions or concerns about that project. But our development process, once an application, a completed application is submitted to the staff, we will post the development application on our website. You'll see the large blue sign that you're starting to see around town. You'll see that posted on the properties. And then you'll have an opportunity for public engagement once that process starts. So it'll be required community meetings. Then certainly if it makes it that far, it will go to the planning board and then city council. But we haven't even started the process yet. So I just wanted to make sure that no one is here expecting the council to take action on that, but you're certainly welcome to speak on that at public comment.
Okay. All right. We have some, Jim, you're going to do the invocation?
Yeah, I thought Mark was doing the invocation, and I was doing the pledge.
Oh, that's right.
Not off the hook that easy.
Mark's going to do it, that's right. And then Jim's going to do the pledge,
Correct.
okay? So let's go ahead.
Well, do we need to call the regular meeting to order first?
No, we're good.
No, we're good,
No, not yet.
because we called the overall meeting to order.
All right.
God of justice and mercy, thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of our city. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with charity and restraint. Give us a spirit of service. Remind us that we are stewards of your authority, and guide us to be the leaders your people need. Help us to see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us, and to treat all persons with the reverence your creation deserves. And finally, Father, renew us with the strength of your presence and the joy of helping to build a community worthy of the human person. We ask this as your sons and daughters, confident in your goodness and love. Amen.
Amen. Jim?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Watch out, Mark.
Oh,
We
boy.
have a couple of recognitions here. And we'd like the people for the Tree City to come on up. All right.
How are y'all doing today?
Great.
So the County Ranger of Gaston County was unable to make it today. I'm the Assistant County Ranger of Gaston County, Phil Blaylock, and I have with me the Assistant County Ranger of Lincoln County. And today we're going to present the Tree City USA Award to Belmont again. On behalf of the National Arbor Day Foundation and the North Carolina Forest Service, I'm honored to recognize the City of Belmont for achievement of the 13th city of the U.S. award, Belmont is one of the 83 cities and towns in North Carolina and one of over 3,500 in the nation to be recognized for this achievement. The Tree City USA program is a partnership between the North Carolina Forest Service and the National Arbor Day Foundation. Awards are presented annually to cities and towns that demonstrate and commit to making their communities more livable and planting more trees for the community. To receive this recognition, Belmont has a public tree ordinance, a tree board and/or city department responsible for tree care and management, a community forestry program that meets the funding requirements, and an annual Arbor Day observation and proclamation that celebrates the benefits of trees. The City of Belmont is also a recipient of the Tree City USA Award, Growth Award. This award is provided to recognition, environmental improvement, and encourage high levels of tree care throughout America. This award is designed not only to recognize achievement, but also to communicate new ideas and help the leaders of the Tree City USA communities plan for improvement in community tree care. The Community Forestry Program in Belmont thrives because of the combined dedication of tree board members, city staff, elected officials, the business community, homeowners, and all the residents who take pride in improving the quality of life in Belmont throughout the environmental stewardship. I am proud to present to the Belmont with your 13th Tree City USA Award and Achievement.
Thank you very much. We will display those proudly.
Thank you.
And Peyton Radford was a big help in that, too. Thank you, Peyton. All right. And thank you very much for that. Next, Phil Bogan is going to get the Main Street Award programs. We got 3 awards. Phil, want to come on up?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am here to give you an update on a challenge that we received last year at the North Carolina Main Streets Conference after receiving a single award for our GOBO projections. A certain city manager, who will remain anonymous, challenged us to, for at the next conference, for the word Belmont to be heard even more, making people jealous. So I think we accomplished this during the conference last month when Belmont was used significantly in a lot of presentations from different speakers throughout the conference. But there is a major price to pay for success, because we have been receiving a lot of phone calls and emails from managers and downtown directors from around the state wanting to know how we do things. So, but last month, the North Carolina Department of Commerce honored the 2020 North Carolina Main Street Award winners. 9 communities received 12 awards during the virtual presentation. Those awards were for excellence in categories in economic vitality, design, promotion, and organization for downtown revitalization. And so, yes, you heard me say 9 communities, 12 awards, but that's because Belmont received 3 awards, which was very nice. In the organization category, Belmont brought home the award for Best Private-Public Partnership in Downtown Revitalization through the collaboration from City, the Tech Works, and other partners. And so this was the first award that we received. The second award that we received in the organization committee that our organization received was Best Economic the Best Economic Recovery Initiative for our Keep the Lights On in Belmont.
That's great.
The third award that our organization won was Best Retail Promotion for the Alfresco Dining Series that we held during the summer of 2020 when we closed the streets down to be able to provide a more dining and a nice space for people to come downtown. Ron Folk was also recognized as our 2020 Belmont Main Street Champion. So thank you for everyone who donated their time, efforts, financial support toward these projects. So at this time, I would like to call up and recognize our board members who are here, if that's okay. First, I'd like to call up Angela Street. Angela is our board chair. Angela's coming.
Wonder Woman.
Angela does it all. Our vice chair, Sister Nancy, Nancy Nance, did Sister Nancy make it? Didn't make it. Our treasurer, Elizabeth Simcox. I know Elizabeth is here. Our secretary is Mr. Kevin Kraus. Kevin, come on up. Emily Rudisil is our design chair. Emily is here. Al Wall is our Economic Vitality Committee chair. Seth Sharon, I don't think Seth is here. Seth is our Organization Committee chair. Amy Bossard is here. Amy is on our design committee, and she's the chair of our dog park fundraising. Caroline Shepard, another committee member or board member, I do not believe is here. Of course, we have Councilman Jim Heffron and Councilman Mark Seelinger. And then, of course, we do have two others I'd like to bring up. They're technically not on the board, but I know that one should be. That's Jennifer Church. Jennifer, did Jennifer make it? Jennifer didn't make it. Jennifer is our volunteer coordinator, and she serves on 3 committees out of the 4, so she's another Wonder Woman. And then, of course, Cassidy Lackey, our other staff. Cassidy, please join us. And so just like to say thank you for all your work, your dedication. I think it's safe to say this is one of the hardest working boards in the city and the state. So thank you, because these awards are a reflection of all that you do for the city. So thank you very much. That would be great if we could.
I think that'd be terrific, yeah. Who's got a camera? You got a camera, Jamie? Good.
Jim and Mark.
Yeah, and we certainly appreciate.
Can Amy and Cassidy come? Maybe stand in front of Phil and Emily. There we go.
There you go, that's better. All right. Got it?
1, 2, 3. I thought I could tell you to smile, but I know. You can see it in your eyes, so smile.
Can't tell if they're smiling anyway with a mask on, you know? Congratulations, guys. Thank you for all you've done. We appreciate. Okay. Who we got signed up for public comment?
Do we do the consent agenda first?
Yeah, we've
For
got to make an
public comment?
approval for the consent agenda, yeah.
I'll
Okay.
make a motion, we approve the consent agenda minus item 11, which will defer to our workshop.
Got a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No, so consent agenda is approved. Let's move into our regular meeting. We have signed up for public comment. You have 3 minutes to speak. Several people here that have signed up, so when we call your name, please come up to the podium and state your name and address, okay? Amy Bossard.
evening, everybody. My name's Amy Bossard. I live at 218 Plaintree Drive. I'm here to, as part of the Main Street Advisory Board, to invite each and every one of you to a possum scavenger hunt, and that's P-A-W-S-O-M-E, not P-O-S-S-U-M. Scavenger hunt to be held along Catawba Street on Saturday, May 1st from 2 to 5. The event's designed to provide a safe, fun activity for people and their pets that will encourage pedestrian traffic and exploration of our river district, as well as raise awareness and financial support towards the construction of the dog park in beautiful Belmont. The 1 mile walking route will begin at Park Street United Methodist Church and end at the proposed dog park site. Registration for the event opened today. It can be found by searching possum, that's P-A-W-S-O-M-E, on the City of Belmont website, or by using your smartphone to scan the QR code located at the event listing on the kiosks downtown. Your $25 ticket will cover you as an individual or your family of 4, that's 4 humans and as many dogs as you'd like to bring. Proceeds will go to the benefit of the future Belmont Dog Park. Any questions?
And that's First United Methodist Church?
Yes,
Park
Park
Street.
Street.
Park Street,
United.
okay. All right, thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Anybody have
you.
any questions? Okay, thank you. And next we have signed up to speak, Angela Street. Superwoman, right?
No, Superwoman's an evildoer, Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman, okay.
You catch everything, Jim.
What?
You catch
Wonder
everything.
Hello, I'm Angela Street, and I live at 2422 Emily Drive in Belmont. So good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I am also the chair of the Main Street Advisory Board and of the Downtown Belmont Development Association. So first, I'd like to thank you all for your service to this community, and also to the city staff for the long hours and the ways they go above and beyond every day. So through my volunteer efforts, I've seen firsthand the pride and dedication with which your staff goes about the day. They wear multiple hats and respond with ingenuity and good nature to every challenge. So you have a really special team, and it well matches the incredible volunteerism and city pride within our community. The truth is that this mix of engaged community, dedicated staff, private business support, and city financial support is absolutely vital for maintaining that special sauce that creates the results we've talked about today. When you have that alchemy of people who genuinely just want to help Belmont thrive in a quality way, you'll see that volunteers are motivated to work tirelessly. When they witness the hard work of city staff, your staff gives it their all. When they receive the department's support and financial means to continue to elevate and excel in what they do. And you, council, will be helped to meet your goals for the city when the results of our events, programs, and initiatives are experienced by the Belmont residents, visitors, and independent business owners. We believe this. To continue to create this special sauce takes your continued support of the DBDA and a commitment to provide the staffing and financial support for the Main Street program. During our workshop with council last fall, we heard from you an interest in providing more public art. We're on board with that. When we commit to elevate our programs to involve more arts and culture, we not only are creating an environment that our residents will enjoy, but we are creating an environment that will attract a better quality of development for Belmont's future. Cultural development is economic development. And the energy and enthusiasm you see from our supporters is a direct reflection of the commitment and support that flows from the top. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have signed up to speak Chris and Kathy Garcia. You have 3 minutes to speak your name and address.
Are we timing?
Are they here?
Well, it might be a moot point.
Apparently not. Okay. I think we have next Allison Knowlton.
Hello, I'm Allison Knowlton, and I just want to comment again on the Smith Farm development. My husband John and I live at 403 Bellwood Drive, and we ask that you vote for the second site proposal for the Smith property. Realigning Bellwood Drive with the middle school traffic light is most important to us. The second site proposal does this and is a lower density development. Thank you again for your efforts.
Thank you, Allison. Next, we have Chuck Stowe.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of our council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I know that we are just in the initial stages of hearing about the proposals for Frady Field and the park there, but just wanted to go on record as we start those discussions. That field is vital to meeting Belmont's mission and vision. As I was driving in this evening, there were 3 different groups sharing the basketball court. There were kids playing a pickup soccer game while coaches or staff were trying to get they were lining off the field and the outfield from the baseball field. It's part of our gateway. It is a vital part of the impression that people have, and seeing that property used as recreational facilities is essential to maintaining that multi-generational feel that we want to bring as people come in from Charlotte and come up Catawba Street. Every time I come in, it would be quicker to come up Park Street, but I like driving up Catawba Street. My grandparents lived on Catawba Street when I was young, played in the field, or in the park that preceded Frady Field. Many of you don't even remember that park, but it was down in the hollow where the first few houses of Adams Bluff are now. But enjoyed that time. But now, 64 years later, I'm enjoying coming in through that and seeing that. And it's good to me as finally a Belmont resident, after being back here since '99, living across the street from Belmont property, down on Lake Wiley, but having moved into Penstow, but being able to have a chance to have a voice, to be here and share with you, but to encourage you as those discussions begin. Let's keep in mind of how that property fits into our vision and our mission statement. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Next, we have Ginger Feemster. How you doing, Ginger?
I'm fine. I hope all of you are.
Good.
I feel as if I should be in the Miss Belmont contest. You know, coming this way, I just felt like my mission should be something other than what I'm here for. What I'm here for, though, is to speak a few words on the Crescent Park Dwight Frady Field. Those of you who are new to Belmont, or fairly new to Belmont, might not know that Belmont is called the River District now. It was called, by most of us, East Belmont. And before that, it was called East End. So whatever you want to call it, it is a vital part of Belmont. And I agree with Chuck. When you come in from Charlotte, over the bridge, you come into Charm. You see the Crescent Park, and it's charming. And to me, the most charming thing about it is seeing families and children. And my favorite part of the park is the basketball court. If you are not familiar with it, there's 6 baskets on a very well-maintained court. I went by the other day, and there were dozens of young men shooting basket. They weren't shooting up, they weren't shooting guns. They were shooting basketballs. And that's what we need, and that's what we want in Belmont. And if we make Belmont a concrete jungle, then the charm is gone, and the shooting of basketballs is gone. Because if you keep allowing these pint-sized places with no yards, there's no place for anybody to go. There's no place for anybody to be. And plus, the people that come into Belmont and say, I love this place. I love it. It's charming. I want to live here. This is where I want my children to come. And then after that, the grass is gone. The trees are gone. The charm is gone. And I'm very well aware of all the building that's been done in Belmont. And all the people that have said, I don't like this. The schools and the roads can't hold up. I want it like it used to be. Those people need to go home. Well, I don't want anybody to go home. I love the people who've come to Belmont. But also, I don't want anybody taking our parks away. And we do have a park that will be taken away unless we stand up, speak out, and do something to prevent it.
Thank you, Ginger.
And you know, Ginger, I could stay up for 13 minutes. But I've enjoyed it, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ginger. Next, we have Terry Cox that signed up for email.
I'll read her email, Mayor.
Adrian's gonna
She
read-
submitted an electronic comment, so I'll read that into the record.
I can't hear you.
I will read her email for
Okay.
public comment.
All right.
So this is from Terry Cox, who is the Executive Director of TechWorks of Gaston County. TechWorks is very excited and enthusiastic about the Museum of the Moon event that is coming to Belmont in October. It's a great opportunity for TechWorks to partner with the city and offer educational programs in science and space. If we can secure funding, TechWorks would like to offer NASA's Build Your Own Mars rover, which we would build with middle and high school age kids from July to October. We would unveil the rover as part of the moon exhibit. This rover project is intended to be a teaching and learning experience for those who want to get involved in mechanical engineering, software, electronics, or robotics. I've told Phil that I think this exhibit is huge for Belmont and will receive interest from across the region and state. This exhibit will be a game changer for Belmont. Terry Cox.
Thank you, Adrian. And next, we have signed up to speak Sherry Alexander.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. It's nice to be able to speak my mind. I would like to say the small Dwight Brady Park will do as much to enhance the FAR development as it benefits Belmont. The park would be a selling and rental incentive for residents who would use the park and their children when they buy into that park, into the development. More and more about the dangers of misuse of land is being stressed. Scientists warn that it will not be long before the misuse and destruction affects the human race. Yet it seems like our leaders, who we have elected to take care of Belmont, are ignoring all that has been learned in the past 10 years. There is a crisis now for the preservation of natural habitats, fields, streams, and rivers. You, our leaders, who we have elected to take care of Belmont, are not trying to find alternate ways to increase revenue. For instance, Rock Hill is benefiting tremendously from the BMX facility and world races. And of all the land that Bar Yarns owns, why not develop that? For instance, the land where the petting zoo used to be, or the land by the river where the greenhouses used to be, or all the land in South Carolina could be developed. The Farr dynasty was built on cheap cotton harvested by slaves and poor freed slaves And that was all the way up into the 60s and 70s. I don't know if everybody knows that. You could go to the beach and see them on the side of the road. And the people of Belmont who worked for very little wages. The vision statement of Belmont says will be a vibrant, multi-generational, it already is multi-generational, community that incorporates small town charm and heritage with entrepreneurial spirit. We're not going to have any heritage. So I wonder what the legacy of Belmont and the cotton mills will be when all things are researched and articles are published and programs are shown. My last question was answered by, was it Ms. Cox? And it was, what is funding for a museum of the moon about? Now, using tax revenue for something like that is not much consideration. It should be in our schools and with the Department of Education, North Carolina Department of Education, to improve our schools and the things they offer. They have a robotics course at Gaston Christian Academy, and they go to things all summer long, and I think that would be a better use of revenue. If it were just a project to draw people downtown for one weekend or one day, I agree with that. Thank you so much, and I hope this does something to save White Brady Field. My father worked in the mill there when they made Kristen Dior hosiery. And I went across the street and played when we were waiting him to come out from work, or if we were at the laundromat. So it means a lot to see that there and have it in Belmont.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And I hope I have not offended any of you, because I know you are under tremendous stress and have a lot to do with all of the things that you have going on. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for speaking. Okay. That concludes our public comment. Let's get on to the regular agenda. The first item on the agenda, or second item is on the agenda, is to consider the adopting of an ordinance approving of the Smith Farm community establishing a general residential conditional zoning district.
And I'm assuming we don't need to go back into public hearing.
Correct.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Yeah.
So as you recall, this case was presented in a public hearing back in February, on February 1st of this year. This is for a zoning petition that considered the establishment of a general residential conditional zoning district to accommodate a 99-unit residential community. The community was proposed on 22 acres located off South Point Road, directly across from the new Belmont Middle School site. The original proposal included 57 townhomes and 42 single-family detached homes. So after the public hearing was closed, after public comment, it was closed, and the council started deliberating, considering the ordinance that we're here tonight to hear as well. The council felt that there were some outstanding issues, specifically density. They wanted to see a development with less density. The original proposal was 4.3 dwelling units to the acre. So the council did continue the case to the March 1st meeting to allow the developer time to consider his development and look at alternative plans. The applicant then came back and proposed to continue the case again to tonight's meeting. So what you have before you are three separate plans. I'll refer to them as option A, B, and C, which are in your packet. This is the original proposal of 99 residential units, 57 townhomes, and 42 single-family. Plan B is 76
residential units, and I'm going to provide a side-by-side comparison in just a moment. And then there's Plan C, which provides 48 units. So you'll see in your packet and on the screen here, here's a comparison table of the different developments. So Plan A and B both have the same amount of acreage, just over 22 acres. The Plan B unit count is 76 compared to the original 99. That brings the density in Plan B to 3.3 dwelling units to the acre. Now, it does increase the building form ratio, which was originally at 57% because of the loss in units, the reduction in units. It brings it up to 75%. Again, the applicant is requesting, as with the original request, some relief in that area. So you can see that between A and B, the development, the lots that it abuts is 15 on the original. It's down to 4 adjacent properties with single-family homes. Plan B provides a significant amount of more open space. We heard some environmental concerns voiced at the public hearing. It went from 4.88 acres up to 7.61 acres of open space. The tree save area stays the same, 6 acres. Now, what does help the environment is the built-upon area. So the original plan, it was 48% built-upon area. That's reduced down to 30%. You can also see a reduction in Plan B in the amount of average daily trips, so less traffic. It still provides, Plan B, like in Plan A, provides 2 access points, one at the intersection, where the signalized intersection across from Belmont Middle School. It does include the realignment of Bellwood to that signal as well. So A and B, you have that same benefit. With the amount of right-of-way dedication on South Point Road, it was ½ an acre proposed in the original. You would get the same ½ an acre dedication in Plan B, a future right-of-way. That includes 945 linear feet of curb, gutter, sidewalk, street trees, and so forth. Also, the developer proposed with Plan A a $30,000 donation to the city to help make the sidewalk connection from this site to Stowe Road. So people in the neighborhood, the new neighborhood, would be able to walk all the way up to Belmont Town Center. They are offering that same $30,000 donation for Plan B. Now, Plan C, you'll see it starts with a smaller amount of property. It's less because the original site consisted of 4 properties. In this scenario, they would just purchase the one larger property, which is almost 19 acres. They would result in 48 units at a density of 2.5 dwelling units to the acre. They would be able to meet that 30% townhome building form, so no relief would be needed for that. It would abut 14 existing homes along Stowe Road, back the adjacent properties. It would reduce the open space to 2.13. We would still have the same amount of tree save area. The built-upon area would actually be 31%, so just a little bit more than Plan B. The average daily trips would be reduced to 450 average daily trips. Now, that development with just the one large parcel would only have one access point, and that would be the northern access point. So there would be no realignment of Bellwood nor any kind of connection to this a second signalized access area. We would have a very small amount of future right-of-way dedicated, just over 3,000 square feet, only 340 linear feet of improvements of curb, gutter, sidewalk on the frontage, and there's no offer of the donation for the sidewalk connection. So again, Plan A is the original. Plan B, you can see the significant open space. We would still get the road connection. And then C is the 48 units without the road connection. So before you here tonight, we're asking you to consider this ordinance. We've prepared two ordinances, one for Plan A, which was the original, and one for Plan B, which is a 76 unit proposal. Staff is of the opinion that Plan B offers the most public benefit with the in the areas of environment and public improvements. When you're considering this case, you will be required to make two findings. You'll need to find if you're motioning to approve a request that this is a reasonable request in the public interest, that is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive land use plan in the area of land use, mobility, infrastructure, environment, and intergovernmental relations. So that concludes my presentation.
Anybody have any
I have
comments, discussion?
questions. So is Plan C, the third option, if we were to vote against both Plan A and Plan B, could the applicant proceed with Plan C by right?
We reviewed Plan C, and the answer would be yes. That plan does meet the Land Development Code. We would ask that it go through the process of a major development plan review. We would not be able to place conditions on that. It would be a by code approval or consideration.
And, typically, townhomes, as a percentage of the development, are restricted to 30%. And under either Plan A, 57%, or Plan B, 75%, that's well over that. What's the reason behind that threshold in the plan? And is there something about this property and the circumstances that warrant an exception to that, or for some reason negate whatever purpose or offset whatever purpose that would be?
Well, that is a great question. With regard, why is the general residential zone restricted to a 30% townhome mix? I wasn't here when it was initially established. My thought on that is it's general residential, and the intent is to create a single-family residential community with primarily detached homes. When you start adding townhomes, you can have smaller lot widths, and you start building up your density. So in this case, they were able to reach the 3.3 density using less area. So it's sort of like a clustering where you'd want to preserve open space and environmental, to have environmental benefits. So they use a smaller amount of area, and they're keeping the townhome form and achieving the density that the council and the general residential future land use designation was looking for.
Last question. I've had some people ask about the impact on schools from this project, and in your experience, do families with school-aged children typically reside in townhomes or townhouses?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have a statistic on that, but typically, single-family homes have the largest amount of children ratio to a family size in a building structure. With townhomes, you typically get very small families. They're typically 2, maybe a 3-bedroom townhome, and they're for young professionals. A lot of empty nesters are looking at townhome products, and you'll find single-family, or most families like to have a little yard in fenced-in yard the rear area for kids to play.
So you don't think there would be much of an impact from?
sorry?
You don't think there'd be much of an impact from these townhomes?
Not
on
from the
school?
townhomes. Again, statistically, and I don't have that number in front of me, single-family detached homes have more children per household than a townhome does. And the beauty of this site, I have to say, is it's directly across from the new middle school and walkable to the high school as well. And if approved, there's planned to be a crossing at the signal as well.
Okay.
And I want
think,
to, I want to make,
statistics-
I'm sorry.
Statistics aside, I mean, I don't know that you can predict who'll buy, what, where. So I don't know if the statistics matter here, particularly with this being right across from a middle school is going to make it very attractive, and a high school to folks with kids. I mean, be that as it may, and this is just a comment, because I've struggled with this some, and, looking at these plans, I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I mean, you've got to make a choice at some point, and for me, a big portion of this is that fixing of that intersection. Without that, we've got a problem when school opens, in my opinion. The density has been reduced, the green space has increased. I'm not a fan of the percentage of townhomes, but, Plan C, we can see what we will get, but it will leave those other lots open. And who knows what the future will bring with these other lots. I mean, here we have a development in total. So, I mean, on balance of the three, I mean, just, where I sit, just to share it with council and the public, I mean, Plan B seems to be the most workable option.
I have a couple of questions. One, if we don't annex this, can they still build this because they would not be able, would we allow them to attach to our water and sewer?
So you're correct that to develop a major subdivision, this property's in the ETJ, but it is subject to our zoning. So it, although it meets our code, it would still need to be annexed into the city for access to the water.
And I want to make it clear, the council asked for two things. We asked for less density, but we also asked for a lower percentage of townhomes, and that is the exact opposite of what we have with Plan B. And I'm one of the main ones wanting the safety part of this, so it really does not sit well with me from the whole scheme of things and the spirit of this, that we're looking at a Plan C. But once again, they may not be able to do that if we don't annex. So I have wrestled with this too, but I feel like that we're being held hostage to some extent, and that does not sit well with me with regard to how a council tries to protect the citizens. So I want to make sure that I may once again get clear that we asked for both things and we're only getting one.
Anybody else have any comments?
I just echo kind of a lot of what's already been said. I'm not necessarily jumping up and down about Plan B, but, I think it does get most of what we want, particularly with the improvements to the Bellwood Drive intersection, right-of-way dedication, the sidewalk network. They did get the density down appreciably. So there's that. And, it's not perfect, but, it's, I think, a good sign of a compromise when everybody's a little unhappy. So, that's kind of how I'm approaching it. Is I think this is a good compromise at the end of the day. Not necessarily the plan I would have come up with necessarily, but I'm not a professional developer. But so that's just I think it's better than Plan A. I think we did kind of challenge them on that, and I think that what they've come back with as far as Plan B is better than what they came back to us with Plan A. And I think another aspect of Plan B that I don't know that we've really hit on as much is there were some concerns about Plan A in the back of the property, which I guess is a little bit more environmentally sensitive with the stream and whatnot that's running back there. And one of the advantages of Plan B is that you've got basically no development at all back there. and you don't have the same issues that you have with like impermeable surfaces and stuff creating runoff into that stream. And I know there's some concerns about, I think some of the people who live further down Bellwood about flooding and whatnot. So if you got a big grassy field, that's less of an issue. So that would just be another aspect of this, I guess I'd kind of call out, but that's how I'm looking at it.
Sheila, I've got one question I meant to ask, and then maybe it's to the developer, or maybe you know the answer to this. It's critical that if we're going to go ahead and approve this, that intersection be realigned and functional in the best case scenario when school opens. Is there any possibility that that is going to happen? Either or, whoever can answer.
You know, the timing, we were starting preliminary design on option A after we had planning board recommendation for approval. That was a risk that we took for timing to get ahead. After the last council meeting in February, when it got a little shaky and there was concerns that were addressed, and to us, we stopped that design because we didn't want to spend any additional due diligence dollars on that design. So long story short, we would, if approved, we would start design on that immediately, finish that, submit to Jerry and Shelley and staff and get approval, and we would start immediately. We were wanting to start this summer to do that. It would be very difficult to have that open, I'm assuming, when school opens in August of this year. It would be very difficult to make that happen. But once we gain our approval, if we're fortunate enough to gain that approval and start, the goal is to get it rolling as quickly as we possibly can. You know, there's no need to delay.
Okay.
Both for our interests, but also subsequently for the school's interest too, because that intersection needs to be
Right, right.
So is that like one of your top priorities then? Once the, I mean, I think we had discussions before about how that was going to be one of the first things that was done upon approval. Is that still the plan?
It would be. It would be done together, all together, and the benefit of option two is it's a relatively simple design, you know, one public road, one alley on some of the best topography on the site, so there's not a lot of impact on the grading, so it should flow fairly quickly. You know, there would have to be storm structures and sewer and water extending in part of that realignment area, so it'd have to be done in the right stage, but it would be, the contract would be led, it would all be together with everything else. It wouldn't be two separate contracts.
Okay. Thank you.
Well,
Ron?
I agree with what I've heard from Richard and Mark. You know, like I'm not super enthusiastic about Plan B, but like Mark said, I mean, you know, that's why we're here to make these decisions, and it's rare for people to get everything they want and a cherry on top. You know, there are a lot of what we do is about compromises, and everyone gives and takes a little bit, and Mark is exactly right. You know, in my day job, that's the sign of a good compromise, is that you leave a mediation or a settlement conference. God, I'm really mad about this aspect of it or that aspect because it was a true compromise. You gave up something that you liked, or you agreed to something that you didn't like. And so I think of the three options, you know, Plan B really checks the most boxes of what we're trying to do, and certainly the most important thing is the realignment of the road, which Plan C would not do. It's the least impactful on the adjacent properties. It has by far the most open space, the least built upon area, fewer average daily trips than Plan A, lower density than Plan A. We still get the same right-of-way dedication and sidewalk donation as with Plan A, and we don't build as close to the sensitive environmental areas like Mark was talking about, because that was raised as a concern too. So I think, as you said in your presentation, Shelley, that is, you know, of the most public benefit to go with Plan B here. And, you know, we've lowered the density, we've addressed some of the environmental concerns, and we still get Bellwood Drive realigned, which has been a subject of concern for quite a while now. And if we don't, then I'm not sure, you know, when and how that would happen. So, you know, I just echo what Mark and Richard have said.
Ron, you have any comments?
I think option 2 is the best bet going forward.
B. How many are in favor of option B?
Well, how about I make a motion?
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
just add one comment. You know, I think the public, just for the public's consumption, you know, we're faced with choices that we have to make here. We have 3 before us. 2 are under conditional use, which means we've negotiated the outcome. Now, if we turn those down, the developer can choose by right, and we have no input at all. So, I mean, for me, and I don't know if it's the rest of the council, it's sometimes you've got to be pragmatic and look at this and understand the outcome. If you turn it down, what will the outcome be, and does it bring any benefit? Because I've had people say, well, just turn it down. Okay, you can do that. But with each action, there is a reaction. And the reaction would be that we get this one development without the density, the sidewalk, the road. Because there's no guarantee that when those other properties are going to be developed, that we can negotiate a deal which will realign that intersection. So,
And considering the cost and size, the cost of the realignment and the size of those properties, I think it would be difficult to make that financially viable.
yeah, and I can tell you, I serve on the MPO, and I can tell you the DOT isn't going to do this road, not anytime soon. So that falls to the city of Belmont to take on a road in the county if we would choose to do so. I mean, we would annex it, I guess it would be in the city then. Or wait on the DOT, which could be a decade, there's no telling. But I'm no expert in traffic, but I feel like that from the safety perspective, and Martha touched on this, there is a need to have that intersection realigned as soon as possible when that school becomes active. Just from a traffic standpoint, this offset intersection is different. People aren't used to it. It's in a bad location near a school. I want people to feel comfortable and predictable at a T intersection. I don't want anybody guessing whose right-of-way it is, whose turn it is to go. I think that adds some confusion. The neighbors seem to support this plan from the people that I've heard from because it touches fewer properties and protects those semi-wetlands, I guess.
And reduces the density.
And the density has come down. So, I mean, to those folks that have reached out to me, people here who may have concerns, is I think you have to look at it, it's not so much a Sophie's choice, but you've got to be pragmatic in your approach and try to establish what's the greater good for the many versus the fewer the one. And from where I sit, Plan B seems to, as Jim said, check the most boxes for us.
So it's obvious that option 3 is ruled out because of the crossing into the middle school.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing, though. This is actually my neighborhood, because none of you live where this is. And I'm the one who said we need to have the sidewalks and the lights, because I don't want somebody to be injured. So I came here planning to vote against it, all right? But I will have to vote for it, because I'm not going to be the one responsible for somebody to get hurt. And I was the most adamant about that. But it does not sit well with me. We're not complying with our land development code. We're not doing what we said we're going to do. So once again, I will vote, but I think the city is being held hostage, and it does not sit well. So I'll make that very clear.
I think it's the land development code we are complying with. It's the comprehensive land use plan where there might be some inconsistencies, but that's just for the record.
Right. Well, the land use plan, the future land use plan envisions single-family residential at 3 dwelling units to the acre and single-family detached primarily, so in that aspect.
But be that as it may, I would make a motion to approve the ordinance adopting Plan B.
I'll second.
Got a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
And I would also make a motion to find this a reasonable request in the public interest because it includes a much-needed realignment of Bellwood Drive and is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive land use plan in the areas of land use, mobility, infrastructure, environment, and intergovernmental relations.
I'll second.
Okay. favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, very good. Let's move on to item number 3, continued public hearing on a petition requesting contiguous annexation of the Smith family properties.
Are we still in public hearing?
Yeah,
or
do we need to reopen that public hearing?
You're in public
Oh,
hearing.
we are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
There we are.
So if there are no additional public comments and you want to close the public hearing, you can.
Motion to close public comment.
Public hearing.
second, all in favor, say aye.
Yes, aye.
Okay,
Aye.
that moves us on to considering the adoption of an ordinance approving a petition requesting contiguous annexation of the Smith family properties.
I'll make the motion.
I have one question, I want to make sure. Adrian, we have not yet received a sewer waiver, correct?
I'm sorry.
We
had
have not
received-
yet received a waiver with regard to sewer, is that correct?
Oh,
For
from
the
the state? No, we have not heard that.
Okay, but it would not affect this particular piece of property then?
No, they're doing.
From the design standards for the,
Okay, we asked the state for a sewer waiver, which we have not received. My question is, does this property get affected?
South Point.
the
The
redesign on the lower
redesign on
gallons
Lower
per
Peninsula.
bedroom that we're waiting to hear back from the state on.
Okay, but this
doesn't
property is
affect
not
this.
affected? It's not a waiver, it's a change. Okay, but my question still stands, is this property affected by that?
I've asked that reduction below standard apply to all new development.
Okay.
Okay.
But I still want to make it clear for myself, can they proceed without us having this waiver on this particular?
Yes, they can.
Okay,
We have advised them that they need to put in a high-pressure sewer system like you have in your neighborhood.
correct.
Be privately owned and maintained by the utility, and that'll connect to the sewer on Stowe Road.
Jim, you made a motion.
Richard made the motion.
I believe you had a motion, but I didn't hear a second.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is Downtown Business Development Association funding request for Museum of the Moon. And if you can explain that to us, that'd be great, Phil.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
It's a moon.
I show up and you leave.
It's not a good sign, is it?
It's not a good sign. Good evening once again, Mayor and Council. I am here to present the Museum of the Moon and ask for approved location and financial support from you. Before I get to the moon, I would like to highlight, I was part of a meeting this afternoon with Gaston County Tourism. They have a consultant that is working with them to develop a 3-year strategic plan. So I'd like to share one thing, if I can. Part of their plan, they highlighted 5 key accomplishments of Belmont tourism over the past 5 to 10 years. The second item on the list was Downtown Belmont Development Association program. And so, again, that just goes to show the work that our board does got highlighted as a major accomplishment by Gaston County Tourism, which is a good segue into why I am actually here tonight to present the Museum of the Moon. As a result of COVID, the DBDA is not in position to hold our regular scheduled Friday Night Live concert series due to crowd and the capacity. and the limits that's being placed upon us. So we've been brainstorming on what could we do for the community to really provide economic support for our downtown businesses and provide some type of outing for the community. In 2019, one of our board members started talking about this moon exhibit that one of her friends was telling her about and just kept bragging about it, and that was Wendy Hostetler. So we started doing our research in 2019 and found the Museum of the Moon. It is an internationally touring art exhibit by artist Luke Jerome out of England. We looked into potentially bringing it to Belmont then. It was booked for the entire year, so we recently started looking into if it was still available, and it will be in the United States in early October and available the latter part of October and November. So we got excited that we could potentially be bringing the moon to Belmont. And so we found out that exhibiting the moon, which is a 23-foot in diameter exact replica of the moon, is internally lit. If you exhibit the moon outside, you can only exhibit it for 3 days due to being exposed to the elements, or if it's interior, housed inside, you can have the exhibit for up to 3 weeks for program purposes. So the DBDA board weighed all options and decided that we would like to exhibit the moon for 3 weeks in downtown Belmont, giving us ample opportunity to do a variety of programming for everyone in the community and the surrounding area. The moon has not really been in the United States too much. These are the locations that it has previously been exhibited, primarily in larger cities, larger museums. So we would be pretty enthusiastic about adding Belmont to this list of the locations where the moon has been exhibited.
Wow.
As far as the economic impact, and that was one thing that we really were keying in on as far as exhibiting it for 3 weeks. We started trying to find any economic impact data out there. The only thing that we came across in the U.S. was Napa, California, because, like I said, the Museum of the Moon is primarily exhibited around Europe and Asia. The visitation numbers that was provided to us by the artist, the numbers were, it ranged from 10 to 16,000 visitors per week, or up to 200,000-300,000 for an extended period of time. So when we found Napa, California's economic report, they exhibited the moon for 9 days as part of an arts festival that they held. Now, Napa is 3 times the size of Belmont, but Gaston County is almost twice the size of Napa County. And then looking at the proximity of our cities to larger municipal cities. So I had a key conversation with Michael Applegate at Gaston County Tourism as far as could these numbers be realistic for us in showcasing the moon for 3 weeks? And he said absolutely. So the economic impact of this exhibit from Napa, California was that they had 40,000 visitors with an economic impact of $2.4 million. Businesses saw increased revenue in their sales. Hotels saw increased stay at their locations. So as far as the moon, it would be provide an ample opportunity to do a lot of programming with the moon as a backdrop. We would have educational visits with schools. It would just be open for visitors. It would be a fundraiser for the DBDA. We could have parties, concerts, theater, et cetera. We could have a lot of opportunities to do programming to attract a lot of people. We have been having key conversations with potential partners, and we have another one tomorrow with the Shoe Museum in bringing in the Shoe Museum, because what we would like to do is have it open during the day for for schools to bus in their students and partner with the Shield Museum to do educational programming around the moon. One of the primary things that we would like to do is step up and accept the challenge that you gave us during our work plan meeting with you. It was to take more calculated risk when it comes to public art. And so public art is a big priority for us. So one thing that we would like to do is do a lot of public art in Stowe Park. We would like to do a lot of gobo projections around town. We are getting known for our gobo projections, so we would like to do a call to artists, get artists involved, create more gobo projections, and turn downtown into a 3-week art gallery so that people would not only come to see the moon, but they would walk around town and see a lot of art. We would also work with our businesses in putting LED light bars in the windows, because we really want to create a really cool environment for the entire downtown. Our businesses in the River District, all up and down Main Street, so that we have this really cool glow about downtown as people walk around or drive into downtown.
Phil, let me ask you a question. What does GOBO mean? What's the acronym for that?
You know, Mayor, that's a really good question.
You don't know?
I will have to research that and get
I don't know.
back with you as far as what GOBO actually means, unless Wonder Woman knows. Angela, any idea?
Anybody know what GOBO means?
Well,
But I will look that up and I will let you know.
what,
So it says it's a dark plate or screen used to shield a lens from light.
What is it?
A dark plate or screen used to shield a lens from light. It doesn't stand for anything, it's just a term used.
All right. Interesting.
So I'd like to highlight just a couple of
well,
organizations.
maybe can you describe the moon a little bit? I mean, I don't know if we've talked about what the actual moon is going to be, that's the centerpiece of all of this.
Okay, again, the moon is a 23-foot diameter, exact replica of the moon. The artist took lunar images and created the exact replica of the moon with craters, and so it's internally lit, so it's an exact replica of the moon.
Bill, say again specifically where you would put it.
If you can, Martha, if you don't mind, I'll get to that point because
Okay.
I'll need your approval on that
Yeah,
one as
because
well.
I watched the video today, so I want to know the details. Okay.
I'd like to highlight a couple of organizations that we have already started talking and collaborating with, because there's a lot of other organizations that we want to partner with and really bring in a lot of community, get more community involvement in this. For example, Black Star Theater, we recently partnered with them, did Barnum Theater production in the park. We're getting ready to work with them on another production, but we're also talking about doing this 3-week exhibit to have more theater going on in the park, because we want to infuse downtown with light, art, music to provide, for a 3-week period.
Interesting.
We're also in conversations with Elements of Empowerment. There was an artist out of Charlotte who painted scenes depicting the entire message of the Underground Railroad. So we thought about this would be a great opportunity to partner with an artist, another organization, to bring in and tell the story of how the moon was part of the light that led people to freedom. We have had communications with Holy Angels about activating their courtyard area with some really cool public art and light. Terry from TechWorks had mentioned in her public comment, we have had several conversations with Terry, again, to do some programming with schools, and we're actually working with her and collaborating on a grant to where we would, students would come in and build a NASA rover. We've also talked about doing some 3D mapping with some students to create some more art projections on some buildings in downtown. So as far as potential revenue, we have been reaching out to some foundations, writing sponsorships to some organizations and getting some good feedback so far. Catch up with my notes. I would say to date, as far as financial support and in-kind support, we're around a $50,000 mark. And this week, after our conversation with you, we'll start our big push for additional sponsorships.
That's good.
Our projected, I need to go back. Our projected budget for the 3-week exhibit would be $125,000. And the 3-week, during this 3 weeks, it would be October the 22nd through November the 14th. So we have 3 weeks to do a lot of programming, to try to encourage a lot of visitation from people in the community, the surrounding area, surrounding states to come into Belmont. So I'm here tonight to request 2 things of you. First, well, Martha, I'll go ahead and answer your question, is location. When we were looking at this exhibit, we felt like for us to really do this, we wanted to have it in downtown for the economic impact it would have on our downtown businesses. So we started looking. We went and looked at the gymnasium at the middle school. We looked in the auditorium. We looked around, and there was no facility large enough in downtown to house a 23-foot moon. So we reached out to Creative Solutions to see if there was a temporary structure that we could rent to house the moon. And this is a picture of a smaller scale metal tent, where they do make a version where the legs of the metal tent are like 22, 23 feet. And then with the pitch of the roof, it would accommodate housing the moon. And so the location that we are looking at right now is the gravel parking lot between the railroad tracks and the South Point Animal Hospital. That's one of the largest areas on Main Street that we have found. And so the renting of the tent would also include putting down a rubber mat and then putting an outdoor carpet on top of that, so that it would feel like the interior of the building. So that's the location that we're looking at, that we would like to put up the metal tent to house the moon. And of course, the second request is financial support. Typically, the DBDA comes to you requesting support for the Friday Night Live concert series. And since we're not in a position to do the concert series, we would like to request that funding of at least $20,000 go towards the Museum of the Moon project, which we're actually calling it Moonlight on Main, because we don't want it to be just about the moon. The moon would just be, it would be a big anchor for bringing people into downtown. But like I mentioned, we want to create downtown as a really good environment with lights and art up and down Main Street, throughout Stowe Park, so that people will come not just for the moon, but they'll spend a lot of time in downtown.
Any questions, Phil?
Just to make sure, since obviously we all hope that things will be conducive to larger gatherings by October,
Correct.
but one never knows these days. I know we talked about this at the Main Street Board, just to for the benefit of all council members. This would still be something that could take place if restrictions of some sort were still in force. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you for bringing that up, Jim. We have talked about that. We've talked about, I had these conversations through emails with the artist. So this event we could scale it back as needed if the restrictions are in place at that time. We could actually lift up some of the tent walls. It will be ventilated. We can restrict the number of people that go in and out at one time, or we can scale back the number, as far as, the events, so that it is scalable.
Well, let me ask you a question. I was going to ask the same one that Jim asked, if there was a contingency, because as they touched on, you don't know what the fall will bring. Hopefully it brings, good news and an end to this, but like you said, one never knows. I know Friday Night Live purchases rain insurance, so it occurred to me, if in a worst-case scenario, you had some draconian restrictions placed on you, can you insure against loss in the event that something unfortunate, unforeseen might take place?
And we could take out an umbrella insurance policy. Worst case scenario, if we wanted to not do the entire 3-week exhibit, we could just have it open air hanging over Main Street for 3 days as a last resort, because just people could drive by and see the moon. But
Fortunately, I think we talked about this. I believe it's coming from somewhere else in the United States. Norfolk, perhaps?
it's coming from, the moon will be in Norfolk, Virginia, prior to coming to Belmont.
So we'll know, if it doesn't make it to Norfolk, or if there are issues, we'll know ahead of time because it's in England, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I think it's just, it's good to hope for the best,
Yeah.
but plan for the worst. But let me ask you, we didn't have Friday night concerts last year, did we?
Correct.
All right, well, let me ask you this, because when you were asking, we were talking about shifting funding. Did the city already commit $20,000 for the 1920 season, which were then not used? Because I was going to,
No, the DBDA has not received any funding from that year. The DBDA went ahead and prepaid and booked the bands, but we never actually got to the point of submitting an invoice or getting paid by the city.
okay, because my question was going to be, why not just reallocate those funds or redirect them? But they never were tendered to you.
Now, I think that the idea is to reallocate the funds for this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just saying if the funds existed from last
Yeah,
year,
yeah,
then I
yeah.
would say I would be open to reallocating them.
Is there a cost of admission for people to enter the tent?
There will be a minimal cost, and that's per the contract from the artist. He wants the moon to be accessible by all, and so there would be a minimal entrance fee of like $2 or $3. So we get to set that price, but they asked us to keep it minimal so that it would be accessible by all. Now, if we have a ticketed concert, that price could go up, but just being accessible to the general public, just open, they asked us to have a minimal entrance fee.
And if it's $2, the DBDA would get to keep the $2?
Correct.
Or like you could have an event or a gala perhaps, or an affair or something.
Or
Yes.
cover any expenses for
You had
whatever
a
event.
lot of ideas around this in a few months to get there. You think you guys pull this together?
Of course we could.
Yeah.
We like accepting challenges.
Phil, I have one.
Wanted to be on the record.
I have one question. Based on what I saw on the video and the people's responses, how are you going to get people to leave? Because if I'm coming in with my kid, those people, they were fascinated. The children were fascinated. They're lying. They're watching this stuff. I'm thinking that's my biggest concern. And I know you may not have the answer now, but that to me, I think it sounds wonderful, but we've got to be real careful somehow with the time limitation because Jamie's children are not going to want to leave. Yours are not going to want to leave. My 10 and 12-year-old grandchildren, they'll look at it and they'll go on. But that's something.
And that's when I'll make sure that Jennifer Church, our volunteer coordinator, has all of our volunteers in place to make sure that we are monitoring the number of people that are in, that can be there at one time, and then kick them out when it's time for them to go, and go spend money in some of our downtown businesses.
I think it's a great idea to have something like this unique to Belmont. All the towns around here, it would be phenomenal.
And
to do that.
especially in light of, I think, even in a normal year, it would be popular, but I think especially if things get better, as we hope they all do, this might be one of the first type of, hey, let's all get out and do something, I think, I definitely, emphasize the educational aspects of it during the day. I really like the Underground Railroad idea. I think that's a really good one. Like you said, we gave you the task to take risks, and I think this is in line with that. But I think it's high reward based on what you've shown us from other jurisdictions, and especially I think everyone's going to want to get out and about and just do something like this and be part of something. And I don't understand art. It's kind of highfalutin, but I think just all the different ideas and things that it will be really attractive to people. And since we're not doing Friday Night Live, I think it's a good ask and a fair ask for us to reallocate the $20,000 we would have given to Friday Night Live to this project, which will take on similar import, be more culturally significant, and probably will bring more people to downtown Belmont even than Friday Night Live would.
Good, unique.
Yeah.
And I did leave out during my presentation, I'm already communicating with Belmont Abbey, with Brad Frazier, who heads up their business department. He's the chair of the business department. As far as would this exhibit be something that he and his class, the one of his classes could potentially take on as a project for providing an economic impact. And so there's, like I said, there's so many partnerships that we could have with organizations, so, and the programming, we want to do something so that it would attract, people from all walks of life, all ages.
Well, Phil, one thing I'd like to say is, and agree with Jim, but the city of Belmont staff, council, we took a calculated risk with our Christmas parade, and it turned out to be a big positive. It was good for morale, I think, for people to get out and do something. I guess there's a certain degree of calculated risk with this as well, but I do think, as Jim said, people will need some sort of venue to get out and about and see their neighbors. And in lieu of Friday Night Live, this is probably a good option. There were folks who advised us not to do the parade. And I don't know what the motivation was behind some of that, but in the same spirit, I think this is good for the public.
Adrian, did you have something?
So if the council is inclined to support this request or the $20,000, I would suggest that we use it, that we pull that $20,000 out of our ABC board donations for this year. That way it's not city taxpayer money going toward this event, it's the disbursements that the ABC board is making. As I've reported to you in the past, the ABC board is doing very well financially, and I think thanks in large part to self-medication during COVID. So the donations that we anticipated are running ahead of what we anticipated. So I would recommend that we pull the $20,000 out of that ABC board revenue and not city taxpayer money.
In that case, can I change my
No,
request
sir.
to $40,000?
You already wrote it down.
I have a question. Is this intended to be like a nighttime event, or would it be open during the day?
It would be open during the day, so pretty much 8, 9 o'clock in the morning through the evening. During the day, we would like for it to be, we would be collaborating with schools and school systems to try to bus in students for educational purposes. But when there's not a scheduled school visit, it would be open for the day for people to bring their children in. And we're, I think even Jamie, we're actually, our promotions chairs actually reached out to also homeschool organizations, because like I said, we want to reach out to everyone and have this successful.
Mark inside of the tent will be lined with black curtains, so it will, even during the day, it will give the
and be lit up with lights, and so.
Ethereal.
even-
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, well, I think the potential partnership with Shield is a good opportunity too. I think the educational aspect is really good, and partnering with the local museum is, I don't know if I've ever done that before, but that's cool. So
It'll be big for Belmont.
Yeah.
So Adrian, do you need a motion from us then?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll make-
I'll make a motion that we approve $20,000 from our ABC money to be used for Museum on the Moon. Moonlight on Main.
And the location of the exhibit, as indicated in the presentation.
Do we need that with it? Okay, yeah, that's fine.
All right, do I hear a second?
Yeah, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Phil, for all your hard work.
Thank you very much.
Great. Find out what GOBO means.
It means go between.
Go between optics.
That's all I find.
Go between optics.
Let's
All
go.
right.
Actually, okay.
Next item on the agenda is consider the approval of proposal for Abbey Creek Greenway subsurface exploration, wetland determination, and construction document preparation.
Phil is much taller than I am, so sorry about that. So the next item on the agenda is consideration of a proposal for additional services from ESP toward the Abbey Creek Greenway project. And just to provide a little bit of background on where we stand to date on the Abbey Creek Greenway, in June 2020, Council and the city signed a proposal for preliminary engineering and design services with ESP that has authorized them to create the graphic that's shared on the screen. And then in November 2020, after the preliminary design work for this graphic was proposed, we came back to City Council and had a discussion showing two alignments, pretty similar in nature, but one that allowed for a more creekside experience, which was ultimately selected as council's preferred alignment, and then simultaneously authorized survey and hydrology studies to be performed on the site to see what the site conditions were so that design development for the Greenway could continue and be wrapped up and presented. So in March of this year, so just last month, ESP did complete the design development drawings for us and provided those to staff. And they are now ready for us to consider a proposal that they have prepared to continue that process for construction documents. So just as a reminder, I wanted to share these graphics with you of the renderings that were originally provided of the preferred alignment. This would be the Upland Trail rendering. This one would be about where 6th Street gets crossed by the Greenway alignment. And so what's shown there is our aerial sewer. And so this alignment would allow not only a creekside experience, but for that to be covered in public art if we so choose. And then finally, a rendering showing a creekside condition at Catawba Street. And so on the left of this, it's a little hard to see on the screen, but there is a boardwalk shown as part of the Greenway. And so really quickly, I wanted to go over the findings of the survey and hydrology work that was performed by ESP, one of which identified an additional perennial stream location, which is circled on your screen just to the east of 6th Street. And so what this meant is that the design would need to include a 60-foot prefabricated bridge that was not originally anticipated. The survey and hydrology report also revealed that there was a significant amount of wetlands near East Catawba Street, which resulted in the likely need for retaining walls, about 100 or 150 linear feet of retaining walls that could be designed in a variety of different ways that can still be determined. But in addition, boardwalk that would be about 200 linear feet longer than originally anticipated in order to make it through the wetland areas. And so here with us tonight, I have Gina from ESP, who can help explain some of those conditions that were discovered and also answer any questions about the proposal before you tonight, which what we had asked as city staff was that they prepare a proposal that would get us from where we are today all the way through construction document preparation and line us up for bidding. So that has been included as part of the proposal before you. And without further ado, I'm going to present Gina to answer any questions you have related to that.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gina Straga. I'm the engineer from ESP on the project. So if you have any questions, I try my best to answer them.
I have a question about a prefabricated bridge, because when we were doing Connect Gaston years ago, it was $10,000 for just a small bridge. What kind of cost are you looking at for a 60-foot prefabricated bridge?
We're anticipating about $1,000 per linear foot for the bridge.
Okay.
This is just based off of bid averages from North Carolina, but just averages from the past couple years.
Okay. Thank you.
What are we going, I noticed one of the items was to prepare a video illustrated graphic. What would that be used for?
I believe this is just used for public engagement.
Right, so what I had asked ESP to do, they mentioned that this was an option for us to consider, was include a price for us to discuss tonight for that illustrated graphic and rendering, which could be used as just a tool to let the public know what's coming or what's anticipated for the Greenway, or it could be used as part of a fundraising effort to really help create a visual for what a potential donor may be contributing toward. So it could be used in a variety of different ways, but I wanted to have that price before you for consideration to either be included or stricken from the proposal.
What, and this might be an Adrian question more than for either of you, but what was the original budget for this project?
Sure, so the original high level before a lot of the work was done on the ground was about 1 to 1.25 million, depending on what stage of the preliminary engineering was done. And then ESP has provided some bullets on some high level reasons for those cost increases, but now we are at about 1.5 before we start doing public art or anything like that along the Greenway. But again, some of that increase in cost is to allow us to do that preferred alignment that City Council was in support of back in November, that would allow for a more creekside experience and a multitude of conditions along the 1.2 mile stretch.
And Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I've got that in the 5-year CIP project at $1.5 million. So in the upcoming year, additional funding for the design, and then beginning in 22, 23, debt service for a loan on that.
All right, because I mean, I think this is a project, I mean, you know, we've committed to it, and I think it's a really good project, but the amount of the increases gave me pause, and I don't know what percent, you know, from 1.1 to 1.2 to 1.5. I mean, we've got two, you know, what percent of increase is that? Y'all are number people.
Well,
That's
1.5 is 50% from
Yeah.
1.
Well, I guess with that too, what kind of situation are we in as far as grant possibilities?
So, and certainly we would be aggressive in going after grants, but we're not ready for that yet on the construction, because you know, we've kind of taken this off in bite-sized chunks and asked ESP to do some work, and they've provided data for us, and now they've come back and, you know, with the direction that we've given them, they've done more analysis and found, you know, that there's a lot of environmental challenges here and constraints, so we need to work through those. Those can also make it a much more interesting project. if designed well.
That's very euphemistic of you.
Well, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. But that would let us be in a position to apply for some grants.
Just a thought on that, because I know the stimulus money that Congress will shortly be raining down on us.
Yes.
It sounded like one of the provisions in there was for water and sewer projects. My understanding was that this project included access to some water and sewer infrastructure, and that was one of the benefits of this project. I don't know, just as a thought, it would seem that that might be a potential avenue that we could maybe explore, is whether we might be able to use some of that money to at least build those parts of it or something, I don't know, but just a thought.
We're still awaiting that further guidance from the Treasury Department on that, but yes, water and sewer is an eligible expense of the
I think
American
that's a
Rescue
good
Plan.
point.
Let me ask, I guess, a question of Gina, is you've got the wetlands and you've got a creek, and I'm sure you've anticipated and forecasted out, but I assume the EPA is going to be involved in this?
Yes, so with this project, we're going to need 404, 401 permitting, so that'll be approved by the U.S. Army Corps.
Okay, with that in mind, your project is including design and scope and all that. I mean, I'm sure you forecast out, but do you anticipate any unforeseen issues when the EPA or Gaston County, whoever reviews this, which might, again, spike the cost somewhat?
No, at this point, I think we've tried to, look at all the different avenues, anything that could happen, and our proposal is considering any of those options.
Worst case scenario from the EPA saying you have to mitigate this or that, you guys have kind of incorporated that into your estimate?
I think with the measures that we're using, we wouldn't anticipate that happening, just with using the boardwalks and knowing what kind of restrictions that we'll have. But I would say that, our proposal just includes what would be needed for a permit.
Okay.
It can be hard to anticipate unforeseen things.
That's what makes them unforeseen.
Indeed.
Well, no, but I mean, you've done this before and you've seen this, so I mean, you can kind of forecast out, looking at the site, that this is a potential red flag for the EPA, which they will want mitigated. So I guess that's what I'm asking. If you've looked at, through experience and doing this before, you feel like you've pretty much covered all the bases of
Yes, I believe so.
possible eventualities?
Yes.
But I do agree with, Richard's overall point that, here we are, these are kind of larger increases, and we would hope that, we don't have another such conversation.
That's what's happening across the entire world right now. So if you tried to build a deck 18 months ago, it was going to cost you this much. You try to build a deck today, there's a short supply of wood.
Are you speaking from personal
materials
experience, or?
Well, building materials are through the roof. I mean, back order of dishwashers, the whole economy is different right now. So the cost increase is pretty much across the board. I mean, ask the guys building houses around town what the cost of their building materials are. It's just, everything's very high. So I think we're going to see this on all of our projects.
Something to look forward to.
Even cost of labor's higher, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, and I didn't notice this, and I may have missed it, but I know when Jerry presents us a proposal, we usually get a plus or minus of 10% as a contingency. I didn't notice that, if that was included or not. Is there any contingency for fluctuation in the proposal?
We do have a contingency included, I believe it was.
It's a 10% construction.
It is 10%?
That's,
Okay.
yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody want to?
I'm good. You guys good?
Need a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Got a second?
I'll second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much for your hard work. Thank you. Tiffany, you got to stay up there now, huh? All right, consider the, item number 7, consider the approval of a scope of services updated for the Belmont Recreation Center Connector Trail.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the next item is related to the Abbey Creek Greenway project, but not specifically related to it. In that, the Abbey Creek Greenway main trail alignment is proposed to end where it intersects at East Catawba Street. And so in initial discussions, we were debating whether or not it would make the most sense to include the portion in the big circle, as shown on the screen, within ESP's scope or the rec center team's scope. And for further analysis, it seemed to make the most sense to talk to the recreation center design team about inclusion of that portion as circled in their scope, since it directly connects with the sidewalk being installed as part of the recreation center build. So the Abbey Creek Greenway team is proposing to install 10-foot wide paved asphalt. And then the recreation center team is 10-foot wide paved concrete. And so it just seemed to make sense to have that scope continue a little bit further north to connect to the ending point of the Abbey Creek Greenway project. To note, the designs for those two projects are also anticipated to connect to the southern end of NCDOT's planned improvements at the intersection of East Catawba Street and Wilkinson Boulevard. And so the vision is that all three of these projects would coordinate on that scope extent boundary to provide, when complete, a full bike and pedestrian-friendly connection for this entire area. But specifically before you tonight, for the recreation center scope, is just the adjustment to include that portion circled, as we discussed, just north of the recreation center site as part of their scope for design, and then ultimately have it be constructed by that construction team edifice as well. And then the smaller circle would allow us to also include the design for a signalized pedestrian and bike crossing. It would be a mid-block crossing over to Kevin Lofton Park, which was always envisioned, but was originally thought of as potentially being included in ESP scope. But because of its location and its proximity to the rec center, by switching that scope over to the recreation center design team's scope, what it will allow is for it to be timed and installed in coordination with the recreation center. And we believe that would be a more seamless coordination effort. And so the recommendation here would be for both of these areas to be included in that design team's ultimate scope of services.
And you'll have a crossing over to Kevin Lofton Park too.
Correct. So 13th Street actually includes a small adjustment, which you probably wouldn't necessarily notice on the ground, but in coordination with NCDOT, their thought is that the bike lane at 13th Street would end, and ultimately bikers would transition onto a multi-use path at that intersection. So Banesh is a subconsultant for CPL, the architect. They would be working on that transition to make sure it's designed properly for the user, as well as a mid-block crossing that would be signalized a little bit away from that intersection. So there would be two different conditions right there.
Thank you, Tiffany. Anybody have any questions? We need a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll
Motion to
second.
approve, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for all your hard work, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item number 8. Consider an agreement with Norfolk Southern, a request to enter into an agreement with Norfolk Southern for a railroad crossing within a proposed River Mist residential subdivision.
Thank you, Mayor. As you recall, the City Council approved a time extension for an 86-lot residential subdivision known as River Mist. Now, this subdivision is located on South Point Road between the Boeing Drive community and Bellwood, I'm sorry, community. So the time extension was granted to allow additional time for the development team to work out a railroad crossing issue that's part of this proposed community. Norfolk Southern has changed their policy. They will no longer enter into a railroad crossing agreement with a homeowners association. It has to be a municipality or NCDOT.
Okay.
So the council in the past has approved one agreement to allow the railroad, Norfolk Southern, to develop the design and draft agreement for the city council's consideration. So the draft agreement is prepared and is provided for you tonight. The design work is complete, and the development team's attorney is here as well. So I'll call you Mr. Roy because I always mess. So Roy is here to speak on behalf of the development team for River Mist.
Thank you.
I'll be very brief. My name is Roy Michaud. I represent the lender on this project, and therefore are trying to help the developer to make sure we have everything square with the railroad and the city. And I'll be very brief. There are two agreements. One is an indemnity agreement between the developer and the city, whereby the developer holds the city harmless from any and all expenses that are in any way related to this railroad crossing. And that involves two things. One is that the railroad requires liability insurance, $2 million a year per incident, $6 million of overall exposure. And we've gotten a premium quote from the insurance people at $1,650 a year to cover that insurance requirement. They have changed agents, and so we're in the process of confirming that that figure is still good. And the arrangement is that the developer would put 10 years of premium into escrow with the city to be used to pay those premiums. And during that 10-year period, they feel that all the lots would be marketable. We would then have a homeowners association that would pick up any shortfall or resume the premiums at the end of the 6-year period. And also, you might keep in mind that this track only services the Allen Steam Plant and provides coal. And those turbines are being phased out. I think the last goes out in 2024 under the latest schedule. The railroad track could be used to haul out some of the coal ash if they don't ultimately resolve to keep it all on site, which I think is headed in a favorable decision to do that. The second agreement is the crossing agreement, and I've given you all a copy of that with all of the exhibits. And the crossing agreement really has three things. One, it has a set of the plans that have been approved. The railroad has been very particular about whatever is built across their right-of-way. So these plans reflect all of their concerns, but keep in mind, the railroad is only involved with 50 feet by 150 feet. And so the plans that they approved relate to the railroad crossing itself. They're interested in keeping the design of the subdivision as it is because they don't want any downstream groundwater issues on their track off-site. And these plans have been approved, and that's not an issue. So as long as we adhere to the city's approved plans, there is no issue about off-site groundwater. The second attachment to this is a 21-page specification that the contractor has to follow in order to do any work within their right-of-way. And in this case, that involves 15 feet on each side of the railroad ties, and that's all. And so this 21-page document is what the contractor has to do in terms of means and methods. For example, erosion control, blasting, anything like that. They have to meet these specifications that are attached as Exhibit B. Exhibit C is the railroad crossing agreement between the contractor and the railroad. And that applies to that same 15 feet on each side. And then Exhibit D is the cost breakdown for what the railroad anticipates that it will incur for the work it does between the rails. The railroad itself contracts to do all of the improvements within the rails and to the outside of the existing ties. And that cost is estimated to be just south of $138,000. We think that's very high because they anticipate that the work will take 90 days and that they'll have to pay a flagman about $64,000, which doesn't make any sense for a track that's probably used once a week. So, but they have to have a flagman out there while the contractor's actually doing work on the track, which makes sense. So that money would also be escrowed with the city. And those two escrows would be placed with you before these agreements are signed, so that there's no chance that you all would commit to the railroad and then not have the money. So I hope that explains it. It's really pretty simple, except when you deal with Norfolk and Southern, nothing is simple, believe me. I mean, it just took months of our pushing just to get these agreements. So, and they're pretty much identical to what we had almost a year ago. So that, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And
I'll just remind the council that in anticipation of it taking this long, this document was presented to you in its almost its exact current form, maybe the exact current form, a good while back, and you had agreed in principle at that time that it looked okay and they could move forward with getting the final technicalities nailed down with this cost estimate. And like Roy said, that money will be deposited in the city's account prior to any kind of final signing of these documents. But I didn't want you to think this is new. These exhibits may be new, but the base document you've already seen.
Other than inserting the estimated cost.
Correct.
Yes.
The cost was blank in the
Right,
original one.
yeah.
And
Correct.
they estimated at that time it'd be 150. Now they've detailed it and said it would be just south of 138.
I mean, I've looked at both the agreements that were in our agenda packet, and they answered everything. I think they're well drafted, and so, you know, I have no issues with them. And I want to, how do you apply to be a flagman? 64,000 for 90 days? I'll take it.
That's that cost of labor you were talking
I might
about.
also remind you that the railroad crossing is not just to be able to develop 6 lake lots. We think that it really enhances the quality of life of people in the subdivision, that they can go directly over to the water, and there are 2 common area open spaces on the water for their use. So it's not just to benefit the developer. We think it just makes it a better project. That's just a reminder.
All right.
I'll move to approve both
Let me-
agreements.
Let me just ask one
Oh,
quick
sure.
question. I mean, Parks, you've read it, of course, and you're okay with this?
Yes.
Document?
Yeah.
I haven't seen this in a while, but I just went through and highlighted in blue a lot of things here, and, you know, at the city's expense, at the city's expense, at the city's expense. Okay, so the city is gonna go ahead and be the
Just to
instrument.
clarify that it's totally reimbursed.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah.
getting to. This will be reimbursed.
We have to pay the money, but it's their money we're paying.
And it's actually prepaid.
Because this is agreement between us and the railroad, so it's the city's expense as between us and them, but the developers paid us the money to be able to pay them. So
Okay.
it's no money, it's net,
And that's all for the construction, et cetera?
yes.
All right,
This is, and again, this is the same document that was presented to you a good while back,
Yeah.
which had been pared down from the original document, because the original document had a lot of other indemnity type language that we found unacceptable. So they did remove that, and this version here is the same as presented to you, what, 6 months, what, 4, 6
A
months?
little more than that.
So, okay.
Okay,
I'll second.
second, motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I want to thank Shelley, too. She's been very persistent in seeing that this gets done. Thank you, Shelley.
You're a sharp girl. Yeah. All right. Next is the presentation of the Gaston County Vision 2040 process.
Thank you, Mayor. We've got David Williams and Gina Shell from Gaston County to present the Gaston County 2040 visioning process.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Glad to be here tonight. My name is David Williams, and I work out at the county manager's office. And just going to be in front of you just for a few moments. I did want to point out to thank you for City Manager Adrian Miller and also Assistant Manager, my man Kevin Kraus. Kevin Kraus. Kevin, I didn't forget you. But we're glad to be here tonight. We have Gaston County and this 2040 Visioning Project. We've been meeting for some time now, and we got a little PowerPoint. My colleague behind me, Ms. Gina Shell, she'll be presenting a vast majority of this PowerPoint. And I'm just glad to say that in listening here tonight and talking to Adrian and the growth that Belmont is experiencing. And we're seeing that obviously, I don't want to preach to the choir, but we're seeing it all over the county, more so on the eastern edge of Gaston County and the Charlotte metro region. And so when we're thinking about this visioning plan, we're thinking about 2040, almost 20 years from now. And so this visioning process is really to be a roadmap to that future and put us in a more competitive advantage in terms of economics, in terms of our physical landscape. We've heard some of those things tonight in terms of development, but more so, how do we work together as a county? And the way we do that is come out to communities like Belmont. We've been to pretty much most of the cities. I think we have 2 or 3 more to go, Mr. City Manager. And the goal is to make sure that we're here from all communities, make sure we have all voices at the table as we plan for Gaston County 2040. And so the team that's involved is a core work team, including myself and Michelle. I'll go through this PowerPoint. Gina, I guess we just hit this button right here that goes down, okay? Make sure I get this right. And as you see on the screen, you'll hear this tonight in terms of, I can't see Mr. Mayor like I used to, so I barely can see the screen. But you'll see this presentation tonight outlines what we'll be talking about. And it really gets down to, from a macro level to a micro level, gets down to looking at what this process is going to be about. And it's about an 18-month process. So the goal there is to seek a lot of community engagement and make sure that everyone has a seat at the table. has an opportunity to speak about how Gaston County could look. This is the team, the core work team that I've been working with, and Michelle. And we do have some members who could not be here tonight. We have Ms. Donna Lockett, who is the CEO and president of Gaston Together. We also have Mr. Dale Murphy, who is a vice president for business strategies at Caramount Health, and Matt Blackwell, who works as the assistant director for economic development with the Economic Development Commission, and Mr. David Fogarty, who works out of Cooperative Extension. I know you're probably familiar with him, but he's the director for that department. And so that's the team, and that's what we're going to be here to talk about tonight. I'm at this time turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Gina Shell, and I'll stay up to help if there's any questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you again, Mayor and Council, for having us tonight. So we're here to talk about creating a community vision for the county for 2040. There have been county visioning efforts in the past. There was Gaston 2012, and that was updated to Gaston 2020. Both of those processes were convened by Gaston Together, and as David said, they remain a partner for this effort. In 2019, the Board of Commissioners invited Ted Abernathy to develop an economic development assessment for the county. He did a lot of stakeholder work, and in addition to coming up with a set of recommendations specific to economic development, one of the things he heard from all of the stakeholders is that they believed that it was time for the county to also think more holistically about where the county is headed. So not just about economic development, but about health, education, quality of life, all of the things that will make Gaston County great. And so that propelled this notion forward. So what we want to do is create just a handful of very important community targets so that those could be identified and named, and all of the partners in the county can work toward those together. The process itself, we want to try to move as quickly as possible. Of course, it's been somewhat challenging as we've dealt with the pandemic, but we do have some sense of urgency, and we want to make sure that we're listening very authentically to our residents across the county. And so we're going to want to take a good amount of time to really have some dialogue and listen to what the community wants the future to be. The effort will be led by a steering committee. We're working on putting that committee together right now with a very strong subcommittee structure, a set of action teams, perhaps related to specific topics or related to specific efforts such as community engagement. We'd have representatives from business, government, faith and clergy, and the community at large. We want an implementation strategy to be baked in. We don't want this to just be something that gets completed and sits on a shelf. I'll talk a little bit more to that in a moment. And we want to make sure that we're having continuous communication with all of you, with all of the rest of our municipalities, elected officials and managers. We are, the product, as we see it, will be a document and a website. We want the vision to be something that's very bold and attention-grabbing for the residents and for all of the partner organizations. The vision, of course, would create a sort of blueprint to identify those common targets, represent the county as a whole. We would hope that the targets would be developed in a way that scalable initiatives could grow out of those. And what we mean by that is that, of course, there will be some major efforts that our major organizations, such as the school system, might need to take on and own. But we would also hope that our neighborhoods or our smaller community groups might be able to find their place in the vision and take on an effort so that they would know that they are working toward the county's goals. We also are talking about a companion effort of creating a community data dashboard or dashboard of indicators. This was another notion that came out of the work that Ted Abernathy did in his 2019 study. This would be hosted online and available for access by public and private partners, by citizens, by anyone who could get to it online. We'd be able to use the data to benchmark our current and future progress. We've talked with UNCC, the Urban Institute. They actually housed a sort of community dashboard some years ago that came out of one of the earlier visioning efforts. It was foreseen at that point to be something that would be regional, but they have, in the years since then, abandoned that effort. And so this would be an effort to reinitiate what they had at one point. We've learned a lot from them in terms of what it would take to stand this up, but we've not decided that we would partner with them again at this point. But we learned a lot from them. We've also looked at some really good examples from other parts of the country. We've listed here Spartanburg and Momentum West. Lots of communities have this sort of dashboard, and we are learning from them as well. So in addition to being able to collect here census data, we hope that we would be able to reach out to our partner organizations and reach down into the neighborhood level and get really dive down level of detail of our data that can be used. And this would be able to allow us to have a sort of an early warning system so that we would know if one of our trends was going in a way that we didn't want it to go. We would be able to get together and change course and get back on track. It would serve as a sort of a call to action. So we've married this idea and the funding of this effort with the visioning effort because we believe that the vision will set some goals, set some targets. We'll be able to use the dashboard to measure our progress toward those targets, but then the dashboard could be used for a lot of other purposes as well. So implementation and accountability, I said that I was going to circle back to this. We do want to bake implementation into the visioning process. And what we mean by that is that once the vision is complete, we want to be sure that we have capacity for ongoing communication and collaboration among agencies in the county, that there's some accountability from the various organizations, be they nonprofits or governmental entities or community groups. We might have an annual event or report out on how the county is doing toward its goals. And then we would be able to have some capacity for ongoing recruitment as our organizational leadership turns over in the county so that any new leaders coming in would know about the vision and know about their organization's role. This is simply a visual representation of how we see the process. There will be a lot of community engagement and dialogue that will feed into the steering committee that will consider that and develop the vision itself. As a parallel to the vision, we would develop the data dashboard and stand that up for community access. The vision would have a set of, again, hopefully a manageable number of targets or goals. And then we would hope that all of our partner organizations, local governments, nonprofits, et cetera, would look back at their strategic plans and their service plans and consider whether the work that they are doing is feeding into the goals that the county has set countywide. Our phases of the process, we're in phase one still right now, just pulling everything together. We're putting together the leadership structure. We are looking at a public-private funding approach, 50-50. Our not-to-exceed budget is $250,000, so $125,000 of that would be public. The county government is picking up half of that, and so we're looking to municipalities to contribute the remaining $62,500. We've based what we're requesting from each municipality on how your general fund is in terms of its size against other general funds. And we've sent the manager a letter. The maximum amount that we would be requesting from you would be $7,357. Again, that is our not to exceed budget. We have not chosen a consultant yet. If we choose a consultant, for example, that is of lesser cost, that would bring that budget down, and we would end up coming back and asking you for less than that amount. But we would ask that you consider budgeting or preparing to contribute that amount to the effort. Phase 2 will be that longer phase of community engagement and dialogue. Phase 3 then will be the creation of the vision and establishment of the goals and the implementation approach. And then phase 4 would be the ongoing vision and action. So we want to be sure that we involve all of the residents of the county, including Belmont residents. We would work very closely with you all and with your staff. We would make sure that we look for alignment with the strategic plan that you already have for Belmont. We would share any news about the effort through the communication channels that your city has available. We would schedule engagement and dialogue opportunities with specific outreach to Belmont residents and involve you all in the committee structure as you would like. And of course, stay in communication with all of you and with the manager. We're not asking for anything tonight. I mentioned the number which we have relayed to the manager, but we're not asking for you to say yay or nay tonight. We just hope that you will be interested to join us in this countywide visioning effort. And we'll be happy to take any questions.
Let me ask a quick question here. I'm seeing Mount Holly's a bigger city than Belmont as far as population goes. But their percentage is smaller than our percentage when it comes to the general fund amount. Why is that?
We based it on the general fund amounts of their budget for this year. And so their general fund, I guess even though the population is larger, their general fund is smaller.
Wouldn't it
At a high
make more
percentage.
sense to base it on the people who actually live in each municipality, since, I mean, I don't know, it's just a curious way to come up with the allotment. I mean, we're outside Gastonia, we're the largest contributor to this, which is odd.
And again, we made a decision to base it on the general funds, and so it's to come up with sort of a sliding scale based on the funding that you all have available from your general funds.
I have a question. I did this like 2 years ago with the Gaston County Airport Economic Positioning Strategy. We did the public-private partnership, and we got to phase 1, 2, and 3, and then 4, where we were supposed to do all the action items, but we haven't heard from anybody since we've done all that. So my concern is this is a duplicate of what we just did in September of 2018. Do you guys use that document, or could we not contribute money to have that document executed at this point?
Are you familiar with that one?
I'm not too familiar. I spent a little time, Mr. Mayor, council member, with some meetings with that. I think this effort is a little, probably more broad in terms of the entire county.
Shouldn't be. I mean, like, I sat on the committee for about a year and a half.
I know.
We just did this 2 years ago, and I'm just kind of curious where we're at.
I think you're talking about the.
It's called the Airport Economic Positioning Strategy, so that's my concern is we always have all these plans, but we're not executing them. And it's a little alarming that you two aren't real familiar with that document either. I'm not pointing that at you, but like in general, like where is it? Who has it? Who's responsible for it? Because we were asked to contribute to that, and we did openly. I think with maybe a little bit of apprehension from some people, but we had to appoint somebody to the board, and they went to all these meetings. We hired this big consultant. We did all this stuff, and then we haven't heard back from anybody since we did that.
I am familiar with the plan. I just didn't serve on the committee. There was like a small subcommittee that I participated in, but it was a very small part. But I would add that you make a great point in plans. I've been a planner. I previously served as county planning director for about 15 years, 20 years in the planning department. And you're exactly right. You know, do plans and they sit on the shelf. But this right here, I think, Councilman, is a little different. We're reaching out to everyone, communities, nonprofits, the whole gamut, to make sure that this process is inclusive and it's implementable. And so it may be some things that in that plan, the airport plan, that we can also look at, examine, that can be incorporated also. I mean, if there's things that were there, that were good, that were working, obviously we can take it and kind of dovetail it, some things in this community vision plan.
Why do we need a consultant? What's a consultant going to do? Before, I recently decided I was going to be a flag man for the railroad crossing. My dream job was to be a consultant and be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, like my former law school did, to pay they paid a consultant to tell us several $100,000 later that the more time you spend studying for the bar exam, the more likely you are to pass it. Which perhaps is one of the reasons why that law school is no longer in business. But, you know, what's this consultant going to do and to justify the amount of money that would be paid to him or her?
Councilman, you know, in terms of the whole process, they'll come in, you know, they have the expertise, and we're looking for, you know, consultant that has done this, that has the pedigree, that can come in and work with different communities. And it also allows for sort of a non-biased, objective approach when you bring in a consultant to come and do this. And I know you know that also. So, but I just want to add to, that's really the whole part about bringing someone that has the experience, and Michelle mentioned about a number of communities we've already done research on. And so we've actually have already received requests for proposals, and we do have ones that we think that we can select, actually the steering committee, once that steering committee is selected, which is gonna be a diverse steering committee to select the consultant that can come and help us through that process, through this process.
What would we as a city get out of this? Like, I can see how the county might want to do something like this, but I'm having trouble thinking of a scenario where participating in this affects anything that we're doing here.
So I'll start. I think this will give us a county-wide perspective, and so it will give us some perspective about how, you know, that we might want the school system to think about educating all of the county's residents. This might give some information and guidance to countywide organizations like United Way, who might serve residents of Belmont as well as the rest of the residents of the county. You know, I happen to live in Mount Holly, just outside of the Belmont line. But I come to Belmont, I work in Gastonia, and so I care very deeply about what's in Gastonia. My mother is in Hickory, so I'm always driving all the way up 321, so I care very deeply about, you know, my experience driving, you know, through other parts of the county. And so I think it's the notion that we know that there are organizations that serve the whole county in addition to Belmont residents, and also the fact that Belmont residents experience the whole county in various ways, depending on where they work, or who they visit, or where their families are, or what sort of our great, you know, natural attractions they might want to visit. And so I think that's how a county-wide look at what we're doing and what we want as a county benefits each municipality.
I can say, I teach urban and city planning with UNCC, and I can tell you, council member, in terms of looking at from a countywide perspective, in terms of the growth that's going to be expected, and we mentioned grant funding, great opportunities to do things from a countywide perspective that may have implications for Belmont. You may have implications for Mount Holly, whatever the case may be. But when you have those kind of community plans, I think it's going to put the county in a better position as a group to go after grant funding. I also think about water quality, right? I think of water quality being a state interest, probably a national interest, right? So Mountain Island Lake is where we get all of our drinking water from. So and it impacts Mount Holly, and it impacts Belmont, it impacts,
We got ours out here.
You getting that? Okay. Well, I'm using it as an example. Transportation is another example of how that's a countywide interest. And so we just want to make sure we're working together. And in 2040, with the growth that's going to occur, we're going to put us in a better position to try to work together as a group. It's like doing things together and making sure that we recognize what's good for Belmont is good for the county. And it was mentioned about the strategic plan for Belmont. It's about how Belmont's strategic plan can actually make this vision better. We wouldn't want to leave Belmont, or Mount Holly, or anyone out, because we're going to actually learn from this community how to make this visioning work and how we put ourselves in a better position in the Charlotte Metro region.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, David. All right. What do you think, guys?
I believe he said we didn't have to make a decision tonight.
No.
So we are going to be asked to contribute to several outside agencies in the upcoming budget. So we may just want to wait till our May budget workshop to consider all those requests. And we only have so much money to spend, and we've got a proposed budget that identifies our needs, and then we can look at outside needs at that budget workshop.
So what you're saying is when we have our budget meeting
in May.
discuss it then? Okay.
But certainly I would like for us to support this effort and this process, and I'd like to commit our staff time toward it. And we went through this process a couple of years ago that updated our comp plan, updated our vision, updated our strategic plan. So we can certainly share that with the county.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is the reports.
Managers.
Challenge accepted. So the next items are the reports from your boards and committees. You've got the draft minutes from the Watershed Review Board, Environmental Sustainability Board, Belmont Tourism Development Authority, Main Street Advisory Board, Downtown Belmont Development Association Board. You've also got the Main Street Advisory Board's 2021 work plan, so be sure to take a look at that. Also the draft minutes from the Planning and Zoning Board meetings from March the 18th and March the 25th. Those were the meetings where they considered the rezoning request from the Pulte Group for the Del Webb project, so please be sure to read through those before we have that public hearing.
What about the Parks and Rec Board? Didn't they meet?
They did meet, but that's not on here. I will send those out to you.
All right.
Because they do have those draft minutes, because they met to talk about the CIP priorities. So that brings me to the manager's report. So as of today, we have reopened our city buildings to the public. They've been closed for, like I said, on Saturday for about 13 months. So we are now reopened. Our residents and customers can still do everything on the website like they've done for the last 13 months. They just now have the option to come in. They still cannot pay in person for their utility bills, but they can set up their accounts. They can get permits. They can register for soccer and do all the things that they have been doing online. They can do that in person now if they need, and if they feel comfortable. I mentioned the Del Webb rezoning. The planning board heard that again back in March, and I think by 4-3 recommended approval of that rezoning to go forward to the city council. We had talked about having that at the April 19th date instead of our April 19th workshop. Del Webb, or the Pulte Group, the applicant, has asked that we push that out. They've had some cost increases to their development budget. They've got to get higher approval for that through their structure. So they would like to push that out to May 10th. So that's a Monday, if you're available for Monday, May the 10th. We'd like to schedule a public hearing.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
they actually requested the 24th.
The 24th, okay.
Yes, the 24th, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. So scratch that, May the 24th. to have that rezoning public hearing. And again, we wanted to have that as a standalone item on a meeting, since that's going to take a while if the planning board meetings were any indication. So that May 10th should be May 24th, which means that our April 19th workshop is back on, and I would like to use that for a CIP discussion. So you've received the draft CIP booklets from Jerry Hatton, so please make sure you look through that, and we'll have that discussion about priorities for the upcoming budget and sort of that 5-year time frame. Also, I'd like to talk about some policy items that we want to look at. The rules of procedure that I've handed out before the meeting that the Mayor Pro Tem Heffron and Councilman Seelinger worked on last year, so I'd like to discuss those at the workshop. Also, we'd like to formalize a utility billing policy. We have a lot of practices, but we'd like to formalize those into policy. And I think we do have some policy, but we just want to update that, but really put the practices into policy. And we have a draft social media policy that we'd like to look at. And so we'll have CIP and policy discussion on April the 19th. So that will be very exciting and open to the public. Then we'd like to have the second budget workshop at your May workshop date, which would be May the 17th. So please send me any feedback that you've got from our previous budget workshop before then. And then Councilman Seelinger mentioned all this money coming from the federal government. In addition to the American Rescue Plan, which we will be getting $3.6 million over the next 2 years. So far, it looks like it's the water and sewer and broadband is the only kind of infrastructure or capital projects we can spend it on, but still awaiting further guidance from the Treasury Department. That will come in probably in late May or June. Half of it will come then. The Congress now has what they are calling community project funding, which is the rebranded version of earmarks they got away from about 10 years ago. They've come back with some modifications and some reforms. So you can submit a community project funding request to your congressperson. That's due by the end of April, and there's a process for it. There's some things that you have to do. The Assistant Manager Kevin Krause is looking at that process and has reached out to Congresswoman Fox's office. She and every member of Congress can submit up to 10 projects. And so far, there doesn't look like there's a funding cap on how much you can request. So we would like to request some funding for the Recreation Center to help with that total project cost.
The entire
Excuse
cost?
me? No, not the entire cost.
Oh.
I don't want to.
Well, there's no cap.
Yeah, it would be fantastic.
Money is meaningless.
And we could certainly call it the Virginia Fox Recreation Center for the full amount. But we would like to submit a request for some funding for that. We've done a lot of work with the Part F grant, and so it should be similar documentation. So if you don't have any objections, I'd like for Kevin to continue working with the Congresswoman Fox's staff on that process. And we've got to get it in by the end of the month.
Certainly beats a teacup museum.
Adrian, I'll be out of town on May 17th.
Okay.
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 We'll let you know that.
All right. But are you okay with us working on a funding request for the rec center to get some federal
Yes.
funding for that? Okay. So proceed, Kevin, with that. I have reached out to the local staff at NCDOT about some of the traffic signal issues in town, particularly at Main Street and Wilson Boulevard. There's been a noticeable backup on the Main Street, the north-south movement of that. We haven't built enough houses to cause the traffic problem from the last 3 weeks, just for the record. So that is not from natural growth, it's a signaling issue, so I've reported that to DOT. DOT was out, I believe, last week working on the signals at the intersection of South Main and South Central at First Presbyterian Church and at Eagle and South Main. They put in new detection loops. So hopefully they'll get out there. And then I did report in the one at South Point Road and Red Raider Run. So, and I have reported multiple times that the large pothole on South Main Street at South Central in front of First Presbyterian Church. they seem to not be able to find it, but it's growing, so eventually they
Well,
will
just tell
find
them
it.
to drive down there, they'll find it soon enough.
So we are working with DOT to get their transportation system up to snuff. And that is
They
all that I
maybe
have.
need Jim as the flag man there too.
I don't know that DOT pays as well as Norfolk Southern, but you can certainly get out there and use your flag. But that's all that I have for you.
Thank you, Adrian. All right, moves us to other business. Ryan, you want to start it out?
Sure. I was just thinking tonight, as we were talking about the Moon project and the ABC funding, that, I've been fairly supportive, I think, of all the Main Street programs over the years, and some of them are more popular than others, depending on who you ask. And I think maybe there's an issue with spending taxpayer dollars on specific projects in the downtown area. And if that's a perceived issue, maybe using ABC funding to fund those projects going forward might be a good path forward, considering the majority of the revenue that the ABC board makes is from the bars and restaurants in the downtown Main Street district. And so if those are the businesses that are then benefiting from the Main Street programs, there might be some good collaboration there. I don't have any real fundamental issues with using taxpayer dollars for Main Street programs, but if others feel that way, I think that could be a good opportunity going forward to kind of earmark some of that money into reinvestment into the downtown area. So just for what it's worth, and I also think the other thing I wanted to mention was just on the Frady Field. The more communication we can have around that, I think, from staff, the more beneficial for us. And certainly, I understand the angst, but there's only so much we can do at this time. And without anybody asking us for anything, it's really hard for us to respond to anything. And so if we can continue to kind of get that message out, unless somebody else disagrees here, I have not had any conversations with anybody on staff or city council who thinks it's a good idea to let that park be redeveloped into multi-units. So I think maybe if we could just keep that message out there as well, it could save us a little bit of time throughout the week.
Yeah, I would just say that I'm in agreement with Ryan on Frady Field. I don't have any interest in seeing that park developed. And with that in mind, I am curious where this information came from, because if you go in East Belmont, you'll talk to people who said someone was walking around handing out flyers. With information, I won't say it was privileged, but it was pretty detailed. So someone somewhere had access to that information and went out and dispersed these flyers and created an issue that really hasn't presented itself. I mean, I would like us to track that down, because that's created a firestorm for council and, an uproar in the community for something that may not ever come to fruition. I think also I'd like to touch on the MPO meeting. Adrian, I think, forwarded to all of you the intersection presentation and the traffic counts, fatalities, and whatever else went along with that. And if you get a chance to look at it, if we could put it on the city website, I think that the public might have an interest in that as well. DOT did mention that they are back cleaning up the highways and roads. Their budget had been affected. They're mowing now on their hopefully regular schedule. So the highways hopefully will look like they did pre-COVID, or at least get close to it. One thing that's been on the back of my mind for a while, and I don't know if we can have a discussion on this, I don't know if we have any latitude on it, but when we're talking about developments and how many homes they can build, it's calculated on the entirety of the acreage, as I understand it, which gives pretty high home count. Nothing's taken into effect about the buildable acreage, whether it's buildable or not, whether it's wetlands, subtracting out roads, driveways, whatever, but that gives us a pretty high house count that then can be applied to a certain area. And maybe we need to look at making that calculation more on where you can actually build homes on the surface where it's allowed or buildable, rather than the entirety of the lot itself. And I think I talked to Shelley about that at one time, and that's a standard practice, but I don't know if it's a rule that you have to do it that way. And I would be interested at some point in, finding out the answer to those questions. And that's all I have.
Well, I would just echo what Ryan and Richard have said. I would be anxious and supportive of increasing communications along the lines with the Frady Field, because as I have indicated to anyone who would want to communicate with me, I also have no interest in redeveloping that park. It should stay a park. And I think, like Ryan said, perhaps we can save ourselves some trouble if we are consistent in those lines of communication. I know we've talked at our retreat about the community outreach, and maybe now that the weather is getting warmer and things are hopefully getting better, maybe it's time to start thinking about launching that. Related to the Del Webb project, there's some discussion at the planning board meeting and from some of the environmental groups about, they made requests to the Del Webb project team about certain environmental considerations, and that's what they needed to do because it's not in the land development code, and even if we were to put it in the land development code, that wouldn't affect this development, because they're already vested. But, that seemed like something almost everyone agreed about as something we could take on, is to, some of these stormwater or buffer type measures, put those in the land development code, and then we could, they'd be there. We've got 2/3 or so of that South Fork property, the so-called Pittenger property, left. That would be there then, if and when that, well, I guess I should say when, someone came to develop those portions. I'd like to get an update at some point on the progress of the North Belmont booster pump station. I know that's been a long time coming, and that was going to be something done in conjunction with the Dixon Village project, so I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that it was under the radar, under the microscope with connection to that project. But, I want to make sure it doesn't go on the back burner. And we should probably, just judging by what I've seen this evening, maybe once the meeting starts, or we should provide some clarity as to which door people should come in while we're meeting in this room, in this configuration, because certainly we want people to be able to come in to attend the meeting at the time they're able to come, but I saw a lot of people very reticent to walk in once people started speaking at the podium, and they didn't want to disrupt the meeting or be the center of attention walking in right in front of the speaker addressing us. So, if there's some way we can steer people to the rear door or whatever, and sort of avoid those awkward situations, because at a minimum, they don't want to interrupt people, but everyone notices it, and it ultimately ends up distracting the speaker from what they're trying to convey. And sorry, just to circle back to where we started tonight, I don't mean to be a stickler on the whole lease versus financing, but I just think that is important, because another point which I neglected to mention is, if it's a lease, what happens to the equipment at the end of the lease? Obviously we want to keep it, but unless something is provided for, typically at the end of the lease you give it back to the person who owns it. So just another item for consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I just want to say I got more calls on Frady Field than anything I've ever gotten, bar none. All the 15 years I've been on this, I've never got. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Were they all kind?
Some of them were. Some of them were. Martha?
2 items. I would like to ask staff to assess the Riverside Flats area that's supposed to have been an amenity, because I think it's a hazard rather than an amenity, and they did do a small walkway, but it's dangerous. So I think we need to look at that and see what, if anything, we have the power to say or do. And Adrian, maybe by next Friday in your update, would you contact the state and see where we are on the waiver? Since we're supposed to hear what by mid-February, and they did not let us know anything. The waiver about the sewer issue, yeah.
All right, thank you, Martha. Mark?
Yeah, not to beat a dead horse, but Brady Field, very important. You know, I've taken Winston to that park, so obviously understand the importance. Even though I don't live in that community right there, I understand why people feel very strongly about that. And I certainly didn't get on council to start bulldozing parks. So for what that's worth, I'll just put that out there. And everyone I've talked to has been very nice. And then just to, I know Ryan just kind of talked about this, but my perspective on property taxes is I personally tend to be a lot more conservative in what we spend those on, but things like ABC taxes and occupancy taxes and things of that nature, which are in theory more discretionary taxes that people pay because they're drinking alcohol or staying in hotels. I have a little bit more discretion there, I guess is the best way to put it. I think funding the Museum of the Moon project with the ABC taxes, even though it kind of sounds weird when you say it, is actually not a bad idea. Whenever we have opportunities to do things like that, I think it makes sense to look at that.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
to adjourn?
Second.
Do I hear a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, guys, for
Hey, you know.
Exhausted.